It's the second day of March 2023. Good evening and welcome to Newswatch, the station where you look and live. I'm Tess Njenga and our sign language interpreter is Boniface Mureithi. With the backdrop of an uproar on the Supreme Court verdict on LGBTQ, we will be hosting Anne Agimba, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, to discuss the impact of the Supreme Court verdict. We are streaming live on our social media platforms at Hope TV Kenya, where we welcome your comments. But before that, let us take a look at the day's events. President William Ruto has said that Kenya will not allow the promotion of same-sex marriage. Speaking in Nairobi during an occasion to mark this year's International Women's Day, the president said that Kenya is a God-fearing nation, adding that though court decisions ought to be respected, he must say no on the issue of same-sex marriages. Whitney Akinyi has more. The legislature has pronounced itself on the now controversial Supreme Court ruling that okayed the formation of LGBTQ associations.
The whole world and the population of the world, Mr. Speaker, is about 7.9 billion people, out of which 2.4 are Christian, 1.8 are Muslims. You talk about the Hindus, 1.3. If the ruling by the Supreme Court becomes cast on the stone, then I don't think it can overturn our constitution. We are going to invoke we the people.
And today, the executive, led by President William Ruto, broke its silence on the matter that has caused public uproar just days after the ruling. Speaking during the launch of the Women Enterprise Fund and the second product of the Hustler Fund, President William Ruto was categorical that he will not allow the country heed to the decision by the Supreme Court. Dr. Ruto said that Kenya is a religious country guided by morality.
Yale mambo ambayo yamefanyika kule kotini, hata kama tunaheshimu kotini, lakini desturi, mila, Ukristo wetu, Uislamu wetu hauwezi kuturuhusu mke aoe mke mwenzake ama mwanaume aoe mwanaume mwenzake. Na mimi nataka niwaeleze, tunaelewana? Mimi nataka niwaeleze ya kwamba katika taifa letu la Kenya tuko na mila, tuko na desturi, tunaheshimu katiba yetu, tunaheshimu madini zetu zote. Hatuwezi kwenda barabara ati ya wanawake kuoa wanawake wenzao, ati na wanaume kuoa wanaume wenzao.
His sentiments were echoed by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, who has come out to condemn the ruling as well. Gachagua stated that they were shocked by the ruling and that it is against the country's morals and traditions.
Ati kuna chama ati ya kutetea ati wanaume waoe wanaume, ati wamama waoe wamama. Sasa hiyo ni mambo gani hiyo? Hiyo ni mambo gani? Sasa mimi nauliza, hata wale wanapitisha hiyo maneno na hatuna ubaya na kotini. Sasa mama akioa mama mwingine wataambiana nini? Mama mtaambiana nini? Hiyo maneno hatutaki. Hiyo ni mambo ya kishetani.
For the first time, the opposition and the ruling party have one thing in common, as Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga equally condemned the ruling, stating that the Supreme Court should have referred the matter to the parliament, which has been given the authority to enact or amend the law.
Sio jukumu ya mahakama kutengeneza sheria. Wakiona kama kuna mwanya katika sheria kama ukosefu au kadi nenda kwa bunge ili sheria itengenezwe.
For Hope TV Newswatch, I'm Whitney Akinyi. Thank you, Whitney, for that report. Now, the Christian Women of Kenya movement have today raised their voice on the Supreme Court ruling recognizing the LGBTQ as an association. Led by Ms. Ada Adoyo, the women condemned the Supreme Court, saying it is against biblical values. Addressing the media, the group said they are advocates of morality and will continue to pray for the nation to liberate it from such vices.
It beats reason that the Supreme Court recognizes a group perpetrating an illegality but institutionalizes it. Is this not opening doors for it to prosper in our country? We condemn this trajectory in the strongest term.
Yes.
Adults choosing a deviant lifestyle have no right to organize or raise funds to corrupt our society. In fact, this perversion and mix-up in values was the main cause of the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah in the scripture in which we believe.
Yes.
The book of Romans calls same-sex marriage an abomination.
Yes.
So this sexual orientation will open doors to institutionalize an immoral behavior in our community, which is foreign to us as Africans and foreign to us as Christians and believers, more importantly. We, as Christian women of Kenya, reject, resist,
Yes.
and oppose
Yes.
the registration and institution of the LGBTQ in Kenya. No, no, no to LGBTQ.
We have come specifically here to stand against the recent ruling of LGBTQ that was passed recently. We are a voice that is saying no.
And as a Christian, I know that LGBTQ is nothing new. It was there during the days of Paul. And that is why Paul talked in Romans 1 from verse 18 to 25, talking about the same things. And there is no law under heaven that can legitimize LGBTQ or whatever they are calling it.
The 7 members of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC selection panel have today been sworn in at an event that was presided over by Chief Justice Martha Koome. The panel is set to spearhead the recruitment process of the IEBC chairperson and commissioners whose positions were declared vacant by President Ruto. Grace Ahati now reports.
I recognize the chairperson of the IEBC selection panel.
The process of the reconstitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission IEBC has begun taking shape following the swearing in of the 7 members of the selection panel. The 7, Bethuel Sugut, Novins Atieno, Charity Kisotu, Evans Misati, Nelson Makanda and Fatuma Saman were appointed by President William Ruto in a Gazette notice released on February 27th. Speaking while presiding over the swearing-in ceremony at the Supreme Court buildings in Nairobi, Chief Justice Martha Koome encouraged the panel members to remain faithful to the oath as they discharge their responsibility. She noted that they are the facilitators of the realization of an electoral body that performs its functions in accordance with the law, one that will meet the aspirations of Kenyans.
Kenyans are looking upon you to give us the commissioners who will meet the aspirations of Kenyans of ensuring that we have an electoral body that performs their function according to the law.
Koome noted that given the history of elections in the country, they have a responsibility of ensuring that their recruitment process accords to national unity and gives the country stability.
Given our country's electoral history, you have the enormous responsibility of ensuring that the process that you are going to embrace accords to national unity and gives us stability. No doubt, you are equal to the task.
Reporting for Hope TV Newswatch, I'm Grace Ahati.
Thank you, Grace. Moving on, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists, Dentists Union and allied health sector unions have intensified the push to have a health service commission established to tackle all human resources issues in the health sector.
Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists, Dentists Union and allied health sector unions have intensified the push to have a health service commission established to tackle all human resource issues in the health sector. Speaking during the press briefing, Operation Linda Ugatuzi leader Professor Fred Ogolla said that as of now they have collected 529,000 signatures nationwide and are targeting 7.2 million signatures so as to amend the constitution.
We have crossed the 500,000 mark. Lakini kwa vile watu wa healthcare wameungana na sisi, watatupatia ile nguvu ya kuweza collect tufike hiyo milioni 7.2. Na tunatarajia ikifika mwezi wa 6 tutapeleka hizo signatures IBC kama zimefika milioni 7.2 kama tuko pamoja na civil society na watu wote wa Kenya. Watu ambao watakuwa hapo peke yao ni watu wa serikali kwa sababu wamekuwa sorted tayari.
Ogolla has urged the government to take the healthcare department back under the national government unless the county governments meet the minimum conditions that are required.
So we want to ensure that these healthcare workers are treated very well and fairly. We also want to urge the government that let us take back healthcare to national government under national government unless they meet the minimum conditions that are required. Because counties don't have resources to pay doctors, they have no enough revenue to pay doctors. So you are giving them doctors when they are broke, doctors will be broke, the person will feel that is the patient.
KMPDU Secretary General Dr. Davji Atela urged the public to participate in the signing collective bargaining agreements with unions representing health workers to avoid frequent and disruptive strikes. He insisted that a health service commission would be able to deal with most of the issues affecting Medic.
And we have to look at it that we cannot have healthcare in 48 governments under one nation. But we need to have one unit that ensures that the healthcare workers are recruited just the way we recruit the police, the way we recruit the teachers. We need to have health service commission. We need to have a framework that will ensure that healthcare workers are paid the salaries on time, that they don't need to wait for 3, 5, 4 months before get the salaries, that the money should not come from exchequer to the counties, to development, to loans, and then to salaries. We need health service commission.
Following the agreement from a task force that proposed that every year the government is expected to increase 2% of funds allocated from the health sector in the country, Davji called upon the government to sort issues of budget and prioritize healthcare and allocation of funds.
Kunao makubaliano ambao serikali ilishukua pamoja na union na pia societies kwa kila mwaka watakuwa wakiongeza ile 2% ya bajeti ya healthcare, ambapo ikifika miaka 2022 watakuwa wamefika ile 15% ambao ilio katika budget declaration.
The KMPDU official said that most of the challenges in the health sector are as a result of poor policies, priorities and underfunding. Kenya, they said, was a signatory of the Abuja Declaration of 2001 where 189 heads of state pledged to allocate at least 15% of their annual budgets to healthcare. According to Dr. Davji, while nations like Rwanda had implemented the declaration, Kenya is still at 4.4% of implementation. Reporting for OpTV Newswatch, I'm Gloria Musimbi.
Thank you, Gloria, for that report. Now, just before we take a short break, let me alert you on a special event coming up. It is a journey that has taken about 6 months from September in the county of Kisumu to Nairobi and is about to come to an end this coming Saturday. I'm talking about the RAF, whose grand finale will be on the 4th of March live on Hope TV and our social media platforms at Hope TV Kenya. With only a few finalists remaining, the winner will walk away with 500,000 shillings, the second with 300,000 shillings, and the third with 200,000 shillings. You do not want to miss this one. Let us now take that short commercial break. We'll be back shortly.
high and low to find the most talented individuals. And now they're ready to showcase their skills to you for a chance at the grand prize, 500,000 Kenya shillings. The judges have a tough decision to make, as each performance is more impressive than the last. And in the end, only one will be crowned the diamond in the rough. Come witness the dancing, poetry, singing of these amazing performers and witness the grand finale with special performances in between. Tune in this Saturday only on Hope TV at 7 p.m. to see who could be the diamond only on The Rough. For the live audiences, doors close at 6 p.m.
The Rough, identifying talent, inspiring passion.
Welcome back. First Lady Mama Rachel Ruto has called for urgent maternal health care in the arid and semi-arid areas during the official opening of the Segera Mission Hospital in Laikipia North constituency. This as residents living in these regions face many unique health and well-being challenges worsened by drought that requires a compassionate and urgent response. The First Lady further donated food to residents affected by the drought, where some regions have missed rain for 5 consecutive seasons due to climate change.
Mara moja au mbili nimetembea kwa ile dispensary ambaye tulikuwa naye hapa ndani, na niliona kwamba ilikuwa kweli ndogo, lakini Director Sarge akaniambia kwamba walikuwa na mpango ya kuweza kuongeza hiyo dispensary kuifanya ikuwe Mission Hospital. Nimesikia kwamba hii Mission Hospital pengine ni Mission Hospital ambaye hawezi kupata nyingine karibu kilomita 72. Tumeambiwa juu ya kina mama ambao wanatembea kilometers ama miles mingi kukuja hapa. Wacha niseme kwamba Mungu ametubariki kuweza kukua na sehemu ama mahali kama hapa. Kawaida mama haitakuwa vema mama apoteze maisha yake kwa kulete maisha duniani. Hiyo sio mpango ya Mungu.
Livestock traders from Suswa area, Narok East Sub-County have denounced the decrease of livestock sale following the ongoing drought situation in the country. Led by their chairman, Stephen Kalembe, the traders have instead called on the county government to increase the number of weekly market days to 2 days, which will allow them more days to sell their livestock. Whitney Akinyi has more.
Livestock traders in Suswa County are requesting the county government for an additional market day, claiming that one market day is not enough. While addressing the gathering, Stephen Kalembe observed that over 200 livestock are taken to the market, but barely half are sold. He further stated that the animal prices have decreased over by 50% as there are lesser buyers due to the prolonged dry spell. This in return makes the traders frustrated as they are forced to drive their emaciated animals back home.
Unakuta ng'ombe hapa inafika ng'ombe 3,000, inauzwa ng'ombe 1,500. Hiyo ng'ombe 1,500 inarudi nyumbani. Wale watu wameshindwa kuuza watakula nini? Pia kondoo ni vile vile iko hivyo. Tukaomba county government tutafungua soko ya Jumamosi, ile ng'ombe hatujapata kuuza Wednesday iuzwe Jumamosi.
Wamekubaliana kwa pamoja kwa mkutano ambayo walikuwa nayo hivi majuzi ya kwamba wataanza soko ya Jumamosi. Na walisema ya kwamba ng'ombe iko hapa Suswa ni ng'ombe 2,000. Na ile ng'ombe inauzwa hapa ni kama 700 ama 1,000. 1,000 inarudi. Na inangojea wiki moja. Watu wanaumia manyumbani, kuna shule, uchumi iko chini.
In the same gathering, Suswa Assistant County Commissioner Godfrey Chitiev said that the proposal to make 2 market days per week at Suswa Market is valid since it will give the farmers an opportunity to sell their livestock. The county commissioner also observed that the presence of brokers in the livestock market was a way of exploiting livestock owners.
Kuna ulaghai kidogo, na ulaghai tumefanya uchunguzi, tunapata kwamba unatokana na wale wanaitwa brokers. Na tumekubaliana na kamati kwamba watakuwa na kikao nao waweze kuzungumza, wakubaliana mikakati ambayo watatumia, wajisajili ili wajulikane huyu broker ni nani na anafanya kazi vipi. Maana ni makosa sana mnunuzi kutoka kama Kiambu, atoke Nakuru, atoke Kajiado, aje hapa kisha apoteze mfugo wake kwa njia ya broker.
For Hope TV Newswatch, I'm Whitney Akinyi.
Now, members of the public have been asked to help identify a deaf boy who was found wandering within Siaya town by the police. Vincent Odongo, a sign language interpreter who was contacted to help in communicating, surprisingly discovered that the boy was unable to communicate even in sign language and could neither interpret nor understand what the boy was attempting to say, as he had no basic knowledge of sign language. Juma stated that in his initial attempts to probe the boy's origin with the service of a lip reader, they managed to detect the word Kisumu from the boy and have deduced that he could have come from the area. However, how he ended up in Siaya remains a mystery. Vincent has urged parents to take their physically impaired children to school so that they are able to express themselves in such situations.
The boy did not go to school, so he could not communicate even in sign language. The only word that the sign language interpreter could detect from the lip reading was Kisumu. Again, the boy also wore a t-shirt that had some writing, the name Otuoma Self-Help Women Group. So those two identities, we are trying to imagine that maybe the boy hails in Kisumu or Busia.
It's quite unfortunate that he's unable to sign, being that he never went to school. So getting information about him is a head nut to crack, sincerely speaking. Even with the deafs themselves, I've called two of them. They've tried to sign with him, but he's unable to. So that is the challenge we normally have in the field when we meet such like cases where illiteracy is all about. So my appeal to maybe parents, fellow parents who have deaf like this boy with us here, I know it's a challenge when it comes to maybe part of financial status, but I kindly urge you, just take them to school so that we are able to link them with the public, or maybe they are also able to address their problems whenever they come to maybe such like difficulties like this. Otherwise, let's hope we'll trace his origin.
A Mombasa court has convicted a local freight forwarding agent for defrauding an Indian businessman of 10 million shillings in 2018. Bivon Ogembo Nyakundi was convicted of falsely obtaining the money from Ajay Pandey to clear 20 containers from Dar es Salaam port and transport them to Zambia and Malawi. The complainant traveled to Mombasa and filed the case with DCI, who arrested and charged Nyakundi with obtaining money by false pretense. In her ruling, resident magistrate Viola Mudhoni said the DPP had proved its case beyond reasonable doubt that the convict had obtained money from the complainant by false pretense, contrary to Section 313 of the Penal Code. Across our borders, tensions dominated the G20 talks in Delhi over Russia's war in Ukraine, even after India's Prime Minister urged foreign ministers to put aside their divisions. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said the meeting was marred by Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war, while Russian Foreign Minister accused the West of barring a deal to allow some Ukrainian grain exports. Earlier, the Indian Premier spoke for developing nations, saying those present had a responsibility to them. The G20, which include the world's 19 wealthiest nations, plus the European Union, accounts for 85% of global economic output and 2/3 of its population.
Get ready for the most thrilling and exciting episode yet below to find the most talented individuals. And now they're ready to showcase their skills to you for a chance at the grand prize, 500,000 Kenya shillings. The judges have a tough decision to make as each performance is more impressive than the last. And in the end, only one will be crowned the diamond in the rough. Come witness the dancing, poetry, singing of these amazing performers and witness the grand finale with special performances in between. Tune in this Saturday only on Hope TV at 7 p.m. to see who could be the diamond only on The Rough. For the live audiences, doors close at 6 p.m.
The Rough, identifying talent, inspiring passion.
Welcome back. Now in business, as Kenya joined the world in celebrating Women's Day, the government has transformed the Women's Enterprise Fund to serve them effectively. President William Ruto said the fund's 4.5 billion shilling annually has been increased to 13.5 billion to serve more women. Dr. Ruto said that beginning next week, women will not be subjected to unnecessary processes like filling of forms and waiting for 45 days to access the funds. The president added that the amount of the Women's Enterprise Fund has been tripled to accommodate more women.
Niliongea na huyu mrembo Aisha Jumwa na nikamwambia ya kwamba kina mama wa Kenya wameonyesha umaarufu wao kwa mambo ya biashara. Women Enterprise Fund ambayo ni fund ya shilingi bilioni 4.5 imefikia makundi karibu 1,100. Almost 97,000 women groups are participating at the moment in the Women Enterprise Fund. Na nikamueleza ya kwamba we are going to do a few things. Number one, katika hiyo Women Enterprise Fund hatutawaacha kina mama nyumba kwa mambo ya teknolojia. We are going to ensure that we bring women on board the technology platform, the digital platform, in the lending of the money associated with women in the Women Enterprise Fund. That is point number one. Number two, I undertook that in the new program, we are going to eliminate intermediaries.
In a similar breath, President William Ruto has announced that the government will subsidize the cost of the 6-kilogram gas cylinder by more than 2,000 shillings. With the subsidy, the price will fall to about 500 in the next financial year beginning this July, which is in line with the government's plan to increase the use of clean energy and reduce the use of fuel wood. The president, who was speaking at the relaunch of the 15-year-old Women Enterprise Fund in Nairobi, also announced that 8% VAT on gas will be abolished. He further warned unscrupulous businessmen against selling and filling faulty gas cylinders, saying they will be dealt with according to the law.
Kwa wale watu 70% ya Kenya wanatumia kuni na makaa, 99% ni kina mama. Si ni kweli? Na ili tupunguze gharama ya gas, tumesema tunaondoa ushuru. Namba 2, ile mtungi mnanunua kuanzia mwezi wa 6, hiyo mtungi itatoka shilingi 2,800 mpaka
And in sports, reigning FKF Women Cup champions Ulinzi Starlets will begin their journey towards reclaiming their title with an away trip to play Gusii Starlets in the opening round of the competition following a draw conducted this morning. In the draw, 32 Kenyan women sides were pooled in 2 pots. Port A and B, and matched up against each other in a total of 16 matches. Kenya Women Premier League defending champions Vihiga Queens start their campaign against Division 1 side Kolwa Falcon, while Thika Queens will face off with County League side Migori EDC. Meanwhile, Gospel Women play away to FKF Women Division 1 Zone A side Macmillan Queens, with Kisumu All Starlets taking on MTG United. Well, on that note, we take a short commercial break, but don't go far, because when we come back, we are delving into that conversation on the LGBTQ and the family. We want to take a look at the impact of the Supreme Court ruling since last week. Don't go too far.
Join John Carson every weekday as he takes us on a journey through the Bible.
Whoever shall seek to save his life, if you go back to living for yourself, you're going to lose it. But whoever shall lose his life, give up his life for my sake, he shall preserve it.
Enjoy interesting, knowledge-packed, yet simple teachings through his humor and in-depth understanding of God's Word.
The last people that tried to put God in a box, literally, he rose again. He wouldn't stay in their compartment. If God was small enough for me to figure out, he wouldn't be big enough for me to worship.
Get ready for the most thrilling and exciting episode yet. We've searched high and low to find the most talented individuals. And now they're ready to showcase their skills to you for a chance at the grand prize, 500,000 Kenya shillings. The judges have a tough decision to make, as each performance is more impressive than the last. And in the end, only one will be crowned the diamond in the rough. Come witness the dancing, poetry, singing of these amazing performers and witness the grand finale with special performances in between. Tune in this Saturday only on Hope TV at 7 p.m. to see who could be the diamond, only on The Rough. For the live audiences, doors close at 6 p.m.
The Rough, identifying talent, inspiring passion.
Welcome back, and it's that time for Candid Conversations with Tess. And in studio, we are joined by none other than Anne Agimba, who is an advocate of the High Court. And we are talking about LGBTQ and the family. We are all familiar with the uproar that has come up as a result of the Supreme Court ruling last week that gave the LGBTQ community the right to associate. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you very much, Tess, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, Karibu. Let's start with the controversial topic of the law of association. As far as we know, the LGBTQ community is illegal. What does it mean when the Supreme Court rules and says that they have a right to associate? Help us understand these legal terms.
Well, I think the hot topic of today is really Article 36. Of the Constitution, which forms part of the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights is basically the articles that cover the freedom of every Kenyan. So when Article 36 is mentioned, it's really about the right to association in terms of being allowed to form any grouping that you want and not being discriminated upon because of age, because of sex, because of orientation, or whatever it is that you want to form the group for. You should be allowed. That's what Article 36 is about. So according to the court, essentially what we're saying is that when they looked at the definition that was given as to whether the LGBTQ association should be formed by the non-governmental organization or board, it was said that it was because of the name, the LGBTQ name, that it was being denied. However, the purpose of the proponents of this association wanted to do so to protect the discrimination against lesbians and gays in the society. So the thing that has brought in a controversy is whether the name should be allowed, and that's what it is the NGO board was dissenting against, and because it evokes the aspect of lesbianism, which as Kenyans we're against. But the fact that they're discriminated upon is a point we can all agree. We do see gays being beaten up on the street. There's a certain hate speech against them. So the court was caught up between a quandary of what's in a name. And this is that kind of case, what's in a name. Thank you.
So when we talk about they are being discriminated against, according to the Constitution, gays are illegal. Is that true or false? Let's understand this first.
Not gays are illegal. What it is we do have people of sexual orientation that our society does not accept. The act of homosexuality is what is illegal.
Okay.
So, but the people themselves who profess to be gay or lesbians, we do not recognize them as being correct in our society.
Does it mean that the Constitution has not clearly defined who they are in terms of the society and what their place is, such that now they're trying to find a place to place them?
Well, what happens is, in this particular case, what's really the quandary is the Constitution does not necessarily really define their sexual orientation. Okay, we do agree that there are people who have, say, intersex people, and even in the Children's Act, there are intersex children who are recognized. So we do recognize that there are such kind of people, but we do not allow the act of homosexuality. That is what it is. That is a quandary.
Isn't it a contradiction in itself?
It is a contradiction, and that's why there's an uproar. Because as a society, we do not approve of that act. So we should not recognize that they should form the association. You see, in normal parlance, from a legal standpoint, is you normally form, if you formed an airline, you'd imagine that if you're forming an airline, it is for the purpose of, flying planes. So in this case, if you have an LGBTQ association, it goes to say that it should be to promote the actions of LGBTQ. But in this case, the proponents of the ones who wanted to have this formed is to protect the LGBTQ rights against discrimination. So that's where it is. It's a little bit of a English misnomer, or how we talk about description.
But it seems like a slippery slope in this regard. CITAM presiding Bishop Callisto Odede said that if we allow them to associate as the gay community, what excludes thieves, for example, or bandits, saying we also have a right to associate because we are people?
Yeah, I do agree with you, Tess. It is a slippery slope, and as Kenyans being a very religious society, both Islam and Christian, which are the major religions, even Hinduism, all those religions do not advocate for homosexuality, and it is a slippery slope because immediately they have an organization, then it means they can, press their elbows and ask for more and more and more rights. And perhaps because this has been a battle of about 10 years, It has been a battle since 2012. That's the first time that the matter came into court, and up to this winning. And that's why it is pretty frightening, because immediately that happens, it does open doors for, greater negotiations for other purposes.
I'm reminded that the Constitution is based on the Word of God, largely. Then how come this deviation is being allowed by the same judges who we see as many people being sworn into office through the Bible? And it's that same Bible that is telling us that, in the Old Testament, homosexuals were actually to be stoned.
Right.
Thank God for grace today. But I think we're almost like stretching it to a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of thing. So in your opinion, in terms of where does the Bible, how come the Bible in this regard has been disregarded, yet it is the foundation for which we have based our Constitution?
Well, the truth of the matter is this ruling does raise a lot of controversy, and is also against many of the things that that are within our Constitution that are against homosexuality. Say, for example, the Penal Code. The Penal Code in several acts does talk about homosexuality being a crime. So I feel that the good judges did get caught up in the definitions, and should have looked at the totality of the meaning of what it is that they were trying to pass, rather than just stick on to the purpose, because it's just stuck to the purpose. They should have looked at the totality and seen how it's going to affect our society, which I must say we are really in an uproar. Yes, in a negative way.
Yeah, actually, the president, William Ruto, today spoke regarding Deputy President Rigiji termed it as a satanic act. We also have our opposition leader, Raila Odinga, who has also condemned in the strongest terms, saying that this is not what we stand for as a community. But going forward, what channels should be used in terms of overturning or reversing the law? Is it even possible?
What is going on right now is that the feeling is that this is not necessarily even a matter that should have been adjudicated by the Supreme Court. It is really about a change of society, and so perhaps this is one of the conversations and questions that should be thrown back to the Kenyan people for a referendum, to give their suggestions and to vote whether or not we should recognize LGBTQs in our society or not. And it's not for the Supreme Court, because it would fundamentally change the way we do our things. It would fundamentally change the penal code. It would fundamentally change how we'd associate, or even the things that we allow or disallow. I mean, of late there's been the uproar about books in school children, books for school children, having the LGBTQ intonations, or even the media, and each program having an LGBTQ person. So in our society, we do shun that. So it would actually affect so many laws affecting us as Kenyans. So perhaps this is something that should be taken on for a referendum.
Speaking of our family, help us understand, how does the Constitution define the family as?
In the Constitution, that should be in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. The family is defined as people of the opposite sex getting married voluntarily. And there are several other definitions in that, but that's the central thing. So within our Constitution itself, we don't recognize people of the same sex getting married. The Constitution is very, very specific that it is two people of the opposite sex, not many people, two people of the opposite sex who get married voluntarily.
Okay, so then where does this ruling place, if you give them the right to associate, that means they are allowed to marry, for example, or that's the road that we are headed to. In case people kept quiet, then that would mean we change even the definition of family.
Absolutely. So it goes down right to what it is that we define as family in our society, and how that would, if we see family as father, mother, and children, then does it mean two fathers and children, or two mothers and children? So it is a slippery slope. And we are getting a lot of pressure, of course, from the West. And perhaps there was an inclination to want to seem modern, as modern as the West, and pressures coming in for us to try and see if we can navigate this space to advance maybe other interests in the country.
Speaking of the West, we've heard that there have been pressures from the West for developing nations to accept such laws or to pass such laws so that they can get donor funding, they can get grants. Do you think that Kenya should succumb to such devices, even though we are in debt to our neck? Yeah.
Well, I think it's important as Kenyans for us to define our own social values and our own cultural values, and more so we are a Christian country, largely Christian, and so do the Muslims and the Hindus, and also the other minor religions define who we are. Even when it comes to defining how marriage is recognized, it is the other religions that define how marriages are recognized. It is not sexual orientation that defines what marriage is like. As a result of that, I think we need to be careful on what it is that we define as a country, or allowing too much influence, because there can be an upheaval in society.
Maybe let's just get back to that impact of this ruling to the family unit. What do you see from a legal perspective, from a Christian perspective? What's the impact to this, to our families?
You know, Tess, the arguments for and against, homosexuality and lesbianism. Are people born that way, or is it peer pressure, or what exactly is the case? If you listen to what many Kenyans said as they were being interviewed, you realize a huge bend by the younger society, a younger generation, being more accommodative. More accommodative and not seeing what the big deal is, and looking at it as more of a personalized issue, that if I'm not gay and somebody else is, that's really their own issue. Society is about change, and change sometimes is inevitable. So perhaps the question again would be to throw it back to as a referendum and say, as a Kenyan society, how do we see family evolving? What is it of us who think persons within our families have other orientation? How do we take them? Should we criminalize them? And it is a slippery slope, and that's why perhaps the judges were inclined to accept for the protection against violence or discrimination for them, because there's really no space in the society that actually advocates for their safety. So we may wish to ignore it, and we may say that we are a religious society, but there are some realities that how then are these people protected?
Would you say that we are, as Christians or as Kenyans, we are too hostile to the gay community, perhaps? I'm not saying that it should be allowed, but I'm just saying the way you're putting it in a way that they could be murdered, or they could be mugged or stoned at any moment. So where do we draw the line between protecting people who do not want to adhere to the ways of the Constitution and the Bible, for which it is based on, and also being human?
I guess, Tess, that's a quandary we are all in. When people are a minority, they're really a minority. And it means that because you're a minority, you're discriminated, against. If, as a Kenyan woman, if you had a beard, would treat you in a different way. If you had a big beard, but in other parts of Africa, it's considered admirable. But in Kenya, with a woman with a huge beard, we would look at you in a different way and would treat you differently. And perhaps then you'd form a society for women with beards, just on a light note. And so, because are you a woman or are you not a woman, and does a woman have a beard, right? So in that case, I think we should be sensitive enough, and perhaps as a society also see, then we do agree that they're discriminated upon. So perhaps what avenue do we then create that will also ensure their rights as people and as Kenyans and our fellow brothers and sisters, that they are protected against any violence or discrimination of any sort?
When I think about it, I remember a clip I just today watched, and it was talking about transgender transracial, and now there is trans-abled. Can you believe, in terms of, there is someone who believes that they should have been born disabled. So now they cut off their hand because they feel like they should have been born disabled. Someone else changes their melanin color to black because they feel like they should have been born that way. So I feel like Kenya is going in the direction of saying no now, because if we do not say no now, these are the things that are on the way. They're just, it's almost like a gate. Once you open one, it's like we don't know how to control it. So that is where now we are trying to define family. We're trying to define it in the constraints of the Constitution, because not just the Constitution, but the Bible, because if we allow all these other things, it looks like there is no end. It's almost like there is no end. So maybe tell us, in terms of our children, children are growing up in this environment. What do you think? We watch movies and series that advocate these things, and probably that is where we actually should have started. Do you think that we need to protect children from such things at an early age?
Well, the Children's Act does legislate that the parent is in charge of, the child's social and moral upbringing. And so the parent does have a duty to protect their children against anything that they consider immoral, right? So, Tess, this topic is not going to go away. It doesn't matter as Kenyans if we wish it away or we say we hate it. The question is really, where will society push us to? And then how do we then navigate those narrow spaces that we are in? And maybe it is in a time like this that we'll have to make our decisions.
Please help us understand the rights of children. Sometimes children grow up in society and we just grow in terms of discipline, in terms of guidance, aside even from these tendencies. Generally, according to the law, what is a child entitled to?
Well, first of all, let's define a child as being a person who's under the age of 18. And a child is, under the Children's Act, is entitled to so many rights. They have, and under the Constitution, so many rights. The right to food, to the basic attributes of life, a right to not be discriminated upon for whatever reason, even from unborn mothers. There's actually, the Act is actually specific. Even by how you were born, you have a right not to be discriminated upon. So the children have many rights so that they can be able to grow up to be normal human beings. So a right to have a safe environment, a right to be looked after. And that's why you cannot leave your child below a certain age alone. And because we do have a Children's Protection Act where the child will be taken care of by the society if you're unable to do so. So there are many, many rights. The right to education, the right to association, to have friends, and to grow up in a healthy environment. So that even you, the parent, if you're not able to provide a healthy environment for the child because you lack food, you don't have a job, or it's a violent environment, or it's a dysfunctional family where the parents are always fighting. Society has a right to protect those children.
Okay, even as we come to a conclusion, I'm reminded that yesterday in Parliament, when the legislators were legislating, some of them brought up the issue of indicting the Supreme Court judges because of bringing up such a law that is anti the society. Is there a possibility of those judges or the Supreme Court being indicted because of such a ruling?
That would be unfortunate. And the reason is we do look up to our judges for their judgment, right? And they should not then be punished because they thought something different. I think that would be very backward. People don't always say the things that you wish to hear. And judges are there to change our society because they're answering to needs in our society. Again, I think it's important for us to remember that the judges did say that they were not, they did not advocate for the changing of the penal code or advocate for the homosexuality as the act. What it is that they were giving a right to for the proponents of the NGO was the right to form an NGO in that name. It was in that name to enable these LGBTQ people be protected from discrimination. That was the bend of it. So it's been twisted a little bit, but it's twisted anyway. There's a way. It's been twisted right through. So,
anyway.
you know, it's a little bit about, you know, yeah.
So way forward, even as we conclude, what's the way forward in terms of this ruling? It's already been done. Is it a done deal? Or what are the ways that the country can go? Because everyone is talking about it, but until it's put down on paper and things start moving in terms of legislation, is it even right in terms of the parliament said that that is the work of the parliament to legislate such laws? So tell us going forward what to do.
So going forward, what has really been advocated for is a referendum. And the question again thrown back to the society, and so that Kenyans can say, should we or should we not? And the reason is because it's gone to the highest court, the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the end of that kind of conversation. So if it's going to take another stand, then it calls for maybe, you know, several millions of signatures for us to revisit this issue and ask for this particular law to be examined. One of the MPs has said they want to go to court to have a review of the ruling. So it is the hottest topic in the country right now. So perhaps it will also give us a new precedent of how things should go. So
in terms of a referendum, tell us a few details of how that will go down for things to change.
It would mean that somebody proposes a certain motion, say for example, or a review, or they advocate the acceptance or non-acceptance of certain LGBTQ rights or not. And so with that, there are many signatures that are given, and then that's taken to Parliament for debate, and then it's put forth for the countries to, for the citizens to vote.
So what's the role of the Kenyan in this regard?
In that regard, the Kenyan would vote for or against. Remember how we voted for or against in the last referendums that we're having? So it would form that route of the referendum. So it would be a thing that the people who are for and against would campaign for or against the advocating of the LGBTQ rights, whether recognized or not recognized. So it would be something that I would imagine if it happened, it would be progressive in terms of a society, of examining what do we actually feel and how do we want actually our society to move forward. It would be progressive. I would advocate for something like that. It would be wonderful.
Okay.
Would change the world.
Yeah. You know, I'm reminded when you speak of referendum, we go back to
the politics.
To the politics, and it makes me wonder in terms of, are we going to change all, you remember all those changes that people have been envisioning for the Constitution? Is this perhaps a moment that Kenyans should take as probably, if we choose to go the referendum way, we can be able to change all the other laws that we feel that should not need to be changed or need to be amended? Is it something that you will recommend?
No, I wouldn't recommend that. Perhaps on this one, it would be the first time that we're having a social a matter on social for a referendum. That would be progressive. So, but not for all of them. We're pretty happy with the Constitution, which we're all happy with what it is that we did. But perhaps this one, it's a time for re-examination.
Okay, your parting shot?
My parting shot is that as Kenyans, I think we need to stand firm about what our values are, and to also take an active stand in terms of being able to protect the people who are minorities in society. So it's a little bit of an oxymoron, but I think it's important that as Kenyans, we all have a right to fully live our lives to the best of our ability. Thank you.
There you have it. Thank you so much, Anna Gimba, for making time for us. Truly great insights, and we hope that Kenya will find direction, the right direction to go in this regard. And that's all we had on this conversation, Candid Conversations tonight. I hope you have learned something, one thing or two, and we hope that the country will find a way forward even in this matter. And that's where we conclude Newswatch this evening. I'm Tess Njenga, and our sign language interpreter is Boniface Mureithi. On behalf of everyone who has made this bulletin a success, thank you for watching and have a good night.